Hey guys, it's Miss Wiesner. This is our new lesson on slope-intercept form. It's actually going to be one of the last things we do in this unit, and I hope that you find it as easy as I find it. I know you probably don't even want to hear the word slope anymore because you've struggled through that. That was a lesson that is normally done in one day, but we had to drag it out, I guess, not being in class and things like that. But those of you who did it, you're going to be set and ready to go next year when you're in Algebra 1. But anyway, so slope-intercept form, I think you're going to find that this is not that difficult. But this is what it looks like. If something's in slope-intercept form, they're talking about y equals mx plus b. Okay, this actually covers several standards for 8th grade. Being able to apply concepts of slope and y-intercept to graphs, equations, and proportional relationships. So that's why we're going to, even though the direct variation, we kind of went through it kind of quickly and I didn't explain it very well, I don't think, we're still going to have to deal with it in this unit or this lesson also. So you need to explain why slope is the same between any, oh, we're not doing that part. Stop. Derive the slope-intercept form and relate equations for proportional relationships. They say y equals kx, but you can also call it y equals mx. With the slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Then you see this F, that means functions. We're going to get into functions next, which I love functions. So investigate the difference between linear and nonlinear. So we're going to be looking at y equals mx plus b as a linear function or a linear equation. We're going to also know that it has a constant rate of change, which we already know that. And then the other thing for point 4 of functions, we're going to understand that the slope is the constant rate of change. We already know that. You're going to learn today that the y-intercept is a point where x is 0. You're going to determine the slope and y-intercept of linear functions or equations given multiple representations, either 2 points, tables, graphs, equations, or verbal descriptions. That's what we're mainly going to be doing today. There's several other, and then it says there's a couple others in functions that we'll be dealing with, but it's not that big a deal. Note that the y-intercept, if you think about football, and there's an interception, that means that the quarterback he's throwing the ball to somebody. He has somebody in mind to catch it. But then someone from the other team kind of breaks that line of the flight of the ball, and he intercepts it. So he intercepts the path of the football and he catches it. That's what an interception is. Well, y-intercept basically is like the same thing, not really, but it's where the line crosses the y-axis. So where that y-axis crosses the path of the line, or the line crosses the path of the y-axis. So this would be one that is non-proportional, because remember, if it's proportional, it crosses the y-axis at 0. It goes through the origin. Okay, so the line always comes out from the corner. But any other kind of line will cross the y-axis at any number of different places. Okay, the y-intercept of a line is the y-coordinate of the point where the line crosses the y-axis. So when we're talking about ordered pairs, we know that the first one is x and the second one is y. Well, since we're dealing with different variables here, and they do this all the time, y and x are your coordinates, okay? So they don't want to use x again. So they call, when x is 0, then they call the letter for the y-intercept b. So at point 0, 3, that would be the y-intercept, okay? So when x is 0, then whatever y is also the y-intercept. May not make a bit of sense to you right now, but just give me a second. Now, you should be taking notes, especially at this point if you haven't started. So you need to write, I would do this color coordinated and all that. Y equals mx plus b. That is slope-intercept form. You will know that forever. And I don't know what kind of graphing calculators they use in 8th grade now, but it used to be that all equations had to be in slope-intercept form before you could use a graphing calculator. And now they have these fancy calculators that it doesn't matter what they're in, but you still need to know. This is still the easiest to work with, in my opinion, because it identifies slope. Slope is the number that you're multiplying by whatever the x is. And the y and the x, those are your ordered pairs. And then plus b, that's your y-intercept. So plus b. Okay? So remember, y equals mx is direct variation or proportional. It's a direct variation or proportional. Sometimes you might see, I don't know why they do stuff like this. Ooh, I don't know why I have it on fat ink. Y equals kx. Sometimes they use a k. You know, can we confuse you enough? It's the same thing as m. Y equals mx. It's a direct variation or proportional since the line intercepts the y-axis at 0. That's why there is no something. We don't have to put plus 0. We already know that. If there's nothing there, then it's crossing the y-axis at 0. And we also know that it's a direct variation. Okay. Here's what you're supposed to be able to do when you have something that is in slope-intercept form. You don't have to graph it. You should be able to just look at the equation and be able to tell what the slope is and where it's going to cross the y-axis, or in other words, what the slope or the y-intercept is. If you remember that an equation in slope-intercept form looks like this, or this is the skeleton, I guess, of it. Slope is 2/3. Okay, and then your y-intercept is actually going to be -4. So if you wanted to write them as actual in their letters or whatever, slope is 2/3 and the y-intercept is -4. So you may not have to look at the graph, which some of you aren't that great at anyway, but you could kind of visualize what this is going to look like. It's going to be a slope that's in the positive direction, and it's going to cross somewhere at -4. I don't know if that's where -4 is or not. I just know that it's going to be below the origin. But you don't even have to know that. All you need to know is what the slope is and what the y-intercept is. Okay, so here's another example I'm going to do, and then there's a couple for you to do on your own. So first I need to pull out what the slope is, and the slope in this case is -5, and the y-axis, or the y-intercept, sorry, is 3. The slope is -5 and the y-intercept is 3. So you can go ahead, copy those two down at the bottom and then do it on your own, or you can just do them with me. So hit pause and work them out, and then come back and see if you got them right. Okay, so the number that's with the coefficient of x is your slope. So slope is 1/4. Now, the regular equation, remember, is y equals mx plus b. But if it's not plus in your equation that you're looking at, then that means that negative goes with that 6. So the slope or the y-intercept would be -6. Okay, so it's going to cross the y-axis at -6. And then on this one, we don't see a number here for slope, but we know there's an invisible 1 there. So the slope is -1, and the y-intercept is 5. Now, here's the next thing you're supposed to be able to know how to do. So write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form with the slope of -3 and a y-intercept of -4. So you need to write this down. First of all, let's look at what the slope-intercept form, I call it a skeleton equation, but the basic equation is that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down y equals, and then see, what does it say the slope is? It says the slope is -3, right, and then x. And then what does it say the y-intercept is? Well, it says the y-intercept is -4. So that's it. All of this in words, remember that was part of what we said you were going to learn, is you're going to be able to write it in slope-intercept form from words. There they are. So y equals -3x minus 4. Has a slope of -3 and a y-intercept of -4. Okay, you do this one. I'm not saying you have to write it down word for word, but I would write down what it tells you. It says write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form. It has to have a slope of 3/4 and a y-intercept of -3. So go ahead and hit pause or write that down in your notes and then come back and check it. Right, so if you're back with us, then let's check it and see if you were right. So the slope is -3. No, it's not. It's, sorry about that, I was looking at the wrong one. The slope is 3/4. So it'll be 3/4 x plus, I was trying to keep it color coordinated, but and it's not going to be plus either, Miss Wiesner. It's going to be minus 3. So y equals 3/4 x minus 3. Now, could you have y equals 3/4 x plus -3? It's not technically wrong, but it's yuck. So when you find yourself making a mistake like I was, go ahead and fix it quickly. Now, this one, you have to write an equation in slope-intercept form for the graph right here that's being shown. So first, what you want to do is find out where this line is crossing the y-axis. And if you look and see, it's crossing the y-axis at point 2. Okay? So that's why the y-intercept is 2. Now, you can find the slope. So you can go do rise over run. You go up 2, and then the run is -4. So it's up 2, the rise, to the left 4, so it's -4. So my slope is -1/2. So you should probably start getting used to reducing your slopes if you can, or you're going to find later how to pick points where you don't have to worry about reducing. But at any rate, my slope is -2/4 or -1/2, and my y-intercept is 2. So it's y equals -1/2 x plus 2. Okay, you do this one. if you feel like you're ready to do this one. The first thing, I went ahead and tried to set it up for you. So obviously you're not going to be able to copy down the graph, but note where it crosses the y-axis, and that's going to be your starting point. That's going to be the point where you find the slope, is wherever it crosses the y-axis. So that's like your starting point. So you can hit pause if you want to, or you can just stay and watch me do it. Doesn't matter. The slope is the y-intercept is -3. So to find the slope, you're going to start at -3, and I'm going to go, I got to get to my next real nice dot. You want to find a line where it crosses the coordinates, at a nice little intersection. So I'm going to go up 3, so my rise is 3, and my run is 5, and it's +5. And I also know that because it's in a positive direction. So my slope's positive. So it's up 3 to the right 5. So my slope is 3/5. So write it in, y equals 3/5 x plus a -3, which I just said don't do that. So y equals 3/5 x minus 3. That would be this graph, the line of this graph in slope-intercept form. First, find where it crosses the y-axis, and then start there and do rise over run, and then find your slope, and then plug it into the formula. Now, one last thing you have to be able to do, and obviously you need to know how to graph lines, but seeing as how we're kind of limited in what we can do with that, you need to interpret the y-intercept and the slope, okay? So the slope represents rate of change, and the y-intercept represents the initial value. So let's suppose you're in student council and you're selling t-shirts. All right, so this is an equation or representation of how much it's going to cost to make the t-shirts. Okay, well, the y-intercept here is 20. Well, 20 represents the initial charge. So the initial charge to make the t-shirt is $20, and then it's $5 per shirt. Remember, the slope is the rate of change. So it's $5 per shirt. So if you're just going to make one shirt, then you're going to spend $25 on that one shirt. If you make 2 shirts, then it's going to be $30, because that $20 is going to be your initial charge. Okay? So when you plug in the number of shirts in for X, multiply it by 5, and then don't forget to add the 20 to it. A taxi fare Y can be determined by the equation Y equals 50 cents X, or 0.50X, plus 3.50, and we're talking about money here. So where X is the number of miles traveled. Interpret the slope in the y-intercept. Well, the $3.50, that's a flat fee. So as soon as you open up that taxi door, you already owe that taxi driver $3.50. And then you're going to owe him additional amount based on how far you ride in the taxi. It's going to be 50 cents a mile. So $3.50 is the flat fee, and then it's 50 cents per mile. Okay, you can try this one if you want to, or you can just wait and do it with me. There is a $35 rental fee for a boat. There is also a $15 an hour usage charge. Put this in slope-intercept form. So if you want to hit pause and do it by yourself, you can. If not, you can just do it with me. So y equals, so 15 an hour, that is your slope. or that is your rate of change. And I'm going to use y and x because we're dealing with the slope-intercept form. And then this 35 here represents, that's the initial charge, or that is your y-intercept. So now you just learned how to look at numbers in slope-intercept form and pull out what the slope is and identify what the y-intercept is. You've been able to put the slope and the y-intercept in slope-intercept form. You've been able to look at a graph and look at the graph of a line and be able to write what it is in slope-intercept form. And this last little bit is interpret what the y-intercept and slope mean in real-world situations. And so we're going to have some practice problems with this because this is a lot that I showed you. But I hope that you found that it's pretty easy. If not, we can have a tutoring session. All right. Love you, mean it. Peace out.